All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Blab.im. I am on live with Steve Sassman from the $1 Million Tesla Trip. I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself real quickly, and then I'll let Mr. Steve jump in as well. So I'm Chris Strubb. This summer, I visited 50 states in 100 days and volunteered with a different youth organization in each state. You see, I've got my shirt on, and spoiler alert, check out what Mr. Sassman's got on as well. Look at this.
Dun, 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 dun.
He's also here. Fantastic. Steve, tell everybody what you did this summer.
Well, I was a little slower. I had to do 132 days just to do 48 states. But I guess I also squeezed in Canada as well. But so I drove to all 48 states in Canada in a Tesla, and was trying to meet inspiring, interesting people. And of course, the one and only Chris Strubb was one of those people. Yes. So it was a fantastic journey and experience. And we actually got to meet up in Pittsburgh, which is also another reason why we're wearing the yellow.
Yes.
So yeah,
yellow,
let's talk about it, my friend.
Yes. So how did this come together? Well, I was texting Steve the other night, and I was like, hey, we should catch up. And I was like, you know what? Let's do it on the record on Blab instead of just chatting on the phone. So we're going to have a little bit of an informal discussion here today about what worked, what didn't work, what was exciting, what was not exciting, what were some of the challenges. This is really cool that both of us sort of share this experience. Obviously, and thank you, Matt, for stopping by, that our experiences converged in Pittsburgh. So we'll talk about that as well and how we made that happen. But Steve, what was your favorite part of your trip?
You know, that's a tough question, and that's one that everybody asks. They always ask, what was your favorite part and what was your favorite place? And it's funny because it evolved over time. And the funny thing is by the end of the trip, I literally almost forgot about all the amazing stuff that happened at the beginning of the trip. And the thing that really jogged my memory was when I redid my video for the whole entire trip, and I realized, oh my God, there were so many amazing things that happened. It's just the fact that you're stacking one on top of the other and there's so many of them that you almost forget how many great experiences there were. So I don't know if you had the same experience, but
yeah, no, I mean, for me, I kind of felt like the stuff that I did in the beginning, and I wrote about this in my book, by the way, which you can now download on my website, teamstrub.com. Some of the stuff in the very beginning, I felt a little bit bad about because I was like really naive about how the whole process worked and what some of the best practices were. And as you go on, you sort of get better at what you're doing. So I would be willing to guess, some of even your interviews as well near the end of the trip were probably a little bit more in depth, maybe even a little bit better produced than they were in the beginning because you get the hang of it, right?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. In the very beginning, you're just kind of going blind. You don't really know what you're doing. And yeah, absolutely right. You do get better at it at the end of it. And then the thing is too, even after you're done, you realize, wow, there's 100 things I could have done better or differently and whatever. And that's part of what we'll talk about today as well.
Yeah. For me, my trip was pretty crazy. My trip was very regimented, unlike Steve's, where he sort of just went out. And this is funny. Steve and I talked a lot about this in person in Pittsburgh. We started having this discussion at the Hard Rock Cafe, which shout out to the Hard Rock Cafe, by the way, for supporting me along the way on my trip. But it's a lot to think about. I mean, it was several months ago now, but it's still all very vivid in my head. I'm sure your trip is pretty clear in your head as well. But it was quite a journey. And I guess I want to ask you this, Steve, if you could go again, would you have regimented your schedule a little more? Because that was a big difference between my trip and your trip. I knew exactly where I was going to be. I had it even printed on a shirt. It's on my business cards and everything. And I knew, like, okay, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh on these nights. Whereas Steve was kind of like, nah, I'll be in Pittsburgh on these nights. So would you do it the same way or would you do it different?
I guess it would have to depend on what my goals were for the trip if I was going to do it again, because that I think would play a big part in that decision. I mean, I think because I definitely agree. I think there's benefits to both. For example, yours is great because you can schedule ahead, you can schedule media, you can schedule, and you can have a much more regimented deal, which works for a lot of things. The one kind of nice thing, though, about doing it more on the fly is that you can, if you get to a place and realize, well, there's really nothing of interest here, you can move along. And if you find a place that's very interesting with a lot of people, you can hang out there longer and do that. And that's kind of the way that I did it. So to me, if I did it again, it would depend on what my goals were for the next trip, as far as which way I would go. I don't know. I'm still up in the air about that. I know you're a big proponent of the regimented way, but
yeah, I mean, I like the idea of scheduling because it sort of kept me going. It also helped a little bit from the budgeting process, which we'll get into in a minute as well, the financial end of things. But just sort of knowing that there was a finish line there, it made it a little more digestible for viewers to watch. To know, like, okay, Chris is 80% done. Chris has 5 more states to go. And I know that I encouraged Steve to start doing that in the middle of his trip as well, to start broadcasting and saying, okay, today's day 72 or whatever, just because it gives you that little, people know right when they start watching how far along you are versus just saying, oh, yeah, now I'm in Arkansas. Like that, it's very difficult to.
Yeah, no, that was a great tip, Chris, and I do want to thank you for giving me that, because that was definitely helped, and I definitely agree with that 100%, because it does give you a lot more context, and it also makes it more marketable in terms of, when you say 50 states in 100 days, that gives people something to grab onto more than I'm on a long trip, So from that perspective, absolutely, I agree. A lot with your take on that.
Yes, and I think that boy, what was I going to say? I got a lot going through my head. I got announced as a speaker at Periscope Summit last night, so that's very exciting. Just got Facebook Live today, so that's cool. KP, I'll see you in a little bit, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. What was I going to say? It was kind of nice to know where I was going to be at each point as well, to sort of even just mentally knowing, like, okay, I'm 70, like it's good from a marketing perspective, but it was also good internally in my head, like, okay, I'm 3/4 of the way done, and it pushes you to want to be able to keep going, because it's tough out there. It's really tough out there, especially when you're by yourself. So, do you think that going alone was the right way to go versus maybe trying to find someone to go with you?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it would have been, in a lot of cases, a lot more fun to do it with someone else, and that person could keep you going when you're feeling, tired or whatever. And I think it would be great. You would definitely want to make sure that you are compatible with that person, though, before you embark on a huge trip, because it could go south in a hurry if you're not if you just for some reason can't get along for very long. Because you're in a very tight space. You're around each other 24/7. So what about you? Did you think of? Did you ever consider doing it with another person, or what was your thought on that?
Yeah, I invited 2 people to come with me before the trip started, because it would be, how cool would that be?
Oh, yeah.
To get out there and have someone there with you and experience all these things, because so many of these moments are trapped in my head, and I'm like, man, I know what that was like, and in a way that's kind of really special, like, yeah, I know what it was like, but at the same time, you're kind of like, oh man, like you sort of wish you had someone to share it with. The other big logistical thing would be the driving. You know, both of us got stuck with 100% of the driving. I actually got to drive the Tesla for a few minutes. What's up, Jana? Jana, welcome. I'll tell you real quick what we're doing. I'm sitting here with Steve Sassman from the $1 Million Tesla Trip. Steve this summer visited 48 states and Canada in his Tesla as part of the $1 Million Tesla Trip. And of course, I visited 50 states in 100 days as part of my voluntourism journey. So that was kind of fun. We're talking about the idea of doing it solo versus bringing someone along with you. And I don't know, it definitely, I think you're exactly right. It definitely has to be exactly the right person if you're going to try and bring someone along. And what's up, little homie? It's very cool to see George here in the room as well. George watched a lot of my Meerkat streams and was super supportive this summer. So it's great to see him here as well.
Hey, I like anybody with the name of little homie. So what's up?
Little homie. And Jana's here too. I recently met Jana. Jana's also speaking at Periscope Summit. We're Snapchat friends and everything. So thanks for checking in, Jana. So Steve, let's get right into it because we got to talk about what the people want to hear, right?
Let's do it.
How did you pay for your trip?
Wow, that's a good question. Very good question.
Silence.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think both of us were hoping to get some sponsors on board. And I know in my case, I literally launched the whole campaign about a month before I left, and I knew that kind of going in that was going to be pretty hard, but yeah, you need more than a month to get sponsors. You need a year. You need, at least 6 months at the minimum to try and do that. So I had a couple things that I thought might happen, but they ended up not. And then, so basically,
how close did you get?
I had some good meetings with a few companies, but nothing panned out, So I think I would have a much better shot, trying to do it again with, proving that I've done it. And because a lot of people will talk about stuff like this, but they just never do it. So, the fact that you've done it twice now, I've done it once, I think someone would be willing to give us a shot over just someone who says they want to do something.
Why should someone give us a shot?
Well, we've proven that we're going to take it the distance, and we did it the hard way. We did it with no financing, on our own dime, without any help. We were one-man bands doing everything, doing the logistics, doing the planning, doing the driving, doing the volunteer work, whatever. I mean, we did it all by ourselves. So imagine if we had some support from, a corporate sponsor, not only, in maybe paying for a hotel, but giving us some social media support, some more exposure, to help us launch into bigger and more markets. I mean, that would have been huge. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that is the one point that I could not agree with more is like what we did was awesome. Both of us, both of our projects, I thought came out great. But if you think about all of what we had to go through to get those things done, and all of the struggle and all of the pain, at least I'll speak from my own perspective. Sleeping in my car, having to max out credit cards. I mean, again, you can read about all this in my book if you're just hearing about this for the first time. I know Diwu is here. I want to say hi to Diwu, who watched a lot of this. But just remembering all of the hell that I went through to make this happen, even before the trip started, the agony of getting those emails back from those big decision makers that say no, and you're like, like, look at what I pitched to you. Look at everything we're going to do. Look at all the measurable ROI and all of the buzzwords that you want to use, and it all came true. And think about how much more maybe we could have done. Again, I live with no regrets. I say that all the time on social media. I say that all the time in person. No regrets. I wouldn't do anything differently. But if you think about how either my trip or your trip or both could have turned out with someone backing us,
Oh my
to put us in a hotel.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, if I think about just some of the interviews that I did when I woke up in Des Moines, Iowa, in the back seat of my car and rolled out and went and bought an orange juice at Walmart and then just walked right in to, Youth Emergency Services and Shelter, I felt like a bum. It was like 100 degrees in my car. Like, it was really, really hard to concentrate to get all of this done. And you're like, if I just had a hotel sponsor, someone to just put me in a bed,
that would have been
much
amazing.
easier. How much easier would all of this have been? And how much, more importantly, how much more productive and how much more impactful would the stuff that we produced have been, knowing that we would have been well rested and energized and ready to attack and everything,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you guys, here's a list of the places that I slept this summer. Okay. I slept in a hotel, of course. I slept in a couple of vacation rentals and an Airbnb. I did a couch surfing one night. I slept in a tent on a friend's porch one night. I slept in a Winnebago one night. I slept in a hostel one night. I slept in a Tesla lounge one night. I slept in my own car, the Tesla, about 20 times. And a lot of times, even when I had a hotel, I would literally get somewhere at 8 o'clock at night and not know where I'm spending the night still. And then I'd have to, get online, figure out, where can I get a cheap hotel? Because when you're doing this for 100 or 132 nights, you can't spend $150 a night on a nice hotel. At least not me, and you couldn't either. I mean, I was spending $50 a night, on Motel 6s most of the time. So, it wasn't
plus the extra $5 for the Wi-Fi. At Motel 6,
right,
of course.
Right. So I mean, literally an hour of my day was spent like figuring out where am I gonna crash? If that would have been taken care of, that would have been such a burden off of my shoulders that, we could have gotten a lot more done from a social media standpoint, from a, who we're going to interview standpoint and volunteer standpoint, all that stuff. It would have been just, that much better. But like I said, I'm in the same boat as you. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm happy that how it turned out. But if I was going to do it again, I would definitely want a sponsor to help, because it would be so much better.
Yeah, I don't even have to say anything for you to sense that I agree 150,000%.
Exactly.
Hey. And at least Steve's car was comfortable to sleep in. I mean, Steve saw my car, the Honda Hotel, as I affectionately called it, all summer. And Dio asked, Chris, what happened to your car with all the messages? It's in the parking lot here at my house. I've still got it, obviously. I have not washed the messages off. We've had a very, very mild winter here in upstate New York. So I haven't even been pounded with snow yet, although I definitely expect that to happen soon. But actually, I noticed it was warmer up here in Watertown, which is more or less Montreal, than it was in Las Vegas last night. It was 49 in the middle of the night last night. It was 41 in Vegas, which is pretty wild. So Greg is asking, how do I organize a 50 school, 50 state speaking? So I'll answer that. I'll jump in and answer that first, Steve. The way I organized my trip was just from the ground up. I mean, I literally started on Google Maps and just basically drew a line from state to state and said, what cities do I want to go visit? Where do I want to be? Of course, I've done this twice. So last year was a little easier, not easier, but just simpler to go from big city to big city. This year, I tried to not duplicate some of the cities that I went to last year. So I went to some different places. But just think about how you would draw it up and just do it. I mean, it really is. I don't want to call it simple because it is pretty complicated, but there's no magic button. There's no magic sauce to it. I was just like, okay, on this day, I want to go to Savannah. And then on the next day, I'll go to Jacksonville. And, when you think about it in your head, don't think about it as a 50-state trip. Think about it as 51 state trips. How am I going to take a trip? And I don't know if you ever thought of it that way, Steve, but that always helped me in my head. Was like, today I'm going to take a trip from Missoula to Dickinson. And then the next day I'm going to take a trip from Dickinson to Cheyenne, or Dickinson to Rapid City, and then Rapid City to Cheyenne. And when you break it down and when you segment it all, you say, okay, I'm going to spend 2 days here or 3 days here. I don't know that trying to do it in 100 days is really maybe the smartest way to do it, because you end up having to do a lot of your states on Sunday. I had to do some states on holidays, like I did Idaho on Father's Day, which was really tough to try and find someone to interview on Father's Day in Idaho. So maybe try and look at it in a more protracted way. But for me, the 50-100 idea made it very marketable and very easy to talk about. 50 states, 100 days, boom. And that was one thing I tried to talk to Steve a little more about. There's Jed Record. I don't know, Steve, how did you start planning your trip?
Well, for me, and this is kind of my philosophy on this, is I think that, just set whatever your goal is, and you'll figure out the details later. You know what I mean? If you try to plan the whole thing before you say you're going to do it, it's just going to be a lot harder. So, you want to do some research, obviously, and make sure it's a feasible idea and all that good stuff. But at some point, you just have to say, okay, this is what I'm doing, and then you'll figure out all the details as you go. And you can, obviously you want to plan ahead, but you'll fill in all those gaps, even if you miss some of the actual planning. I
think my biggest piece of advice is start early. Like if you want to go do something like this, start. If it's in your head now, don't put it off. Don't wait. First of all, don't wait at all. Because written on my car in my own words is do or do not. There is no try. That's my favorite statement. That's my favorite quote. I know Jed is here, Mr. Quote, on all of his social media channels, and I don't know that he realizes how much I appreciate seeing that stuff, because it really does inspire me. So if you don't follow Jed Record, please do that. But don't wait is my best advice, because there is an enormous amount of planning, and just like anything else in the world, what you're going to do, what you're going to get out of it, you get what you put into it. You absolutely get what you put into it. So if you jumped in your car today and you just started driving, and you didn't put in any pre-work to figure out where you want to go, how you're going to advertise it, anything like that, you're not going to get a very good product, because even you don't know what you want. For me, I knew what I wanted, and I, to a degree, I got a lot of what I wanted. I think if I had said, maybe it would have been smarter for me to say, I'm going to visit this, and then my next plan is I'm going to speak about it around the United States, or I'm going to start my own business, or whatever it is. Make sure you have that long-term plan as well. I think both Steve and I would agree, like maybe we wish we had thought a little bit more about what happened next, because we both put in a lot of work to try and figure out what happened during the trip, but then it just sort of ended. And to me, the more I think about it, it's like, oh, I shouldn't be surprised. And what's up, Blue Streak Radio? I shouldn't be surprised that I don't have any idea what I'm doing, because I didn't plan for this. I planned for May 15th to August 21st, and it went great through those days. But then there was nothing.
Right. No, and I had the same experience for sure. But part of that too was, you don't know what a trip like this may lead to. And some of it, I've gotten different people that have approached me about different things since, and, still talking about, stuff in the future. But yeah, it's hard to plan, and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what offers are going to come your way. So it is hard to plan now, but I would have liked, like you said, Chris, to have maybe thought about it and at least try to brainstorm about what are some of the possibilities that could come of this, and maybe what are some things I can do on the trip that will help amplify those opportunities.
Yeah, tell me if you agree with this mindset. And just to recap, I'm here with Steve Sassman from the $1 Million Tesla Trip. We met up in Pittsburgh, which we'll talk about here in a minute as well, that our two cross-country treks actually crossed paths for a really fun night well, 2 days we hung out in Pittsburgh. We had a really fun night in Frick Park in Pittsburgh, which was really, really cool. We'll talk about that here in a minute.
Digging up invasive trees in a mosquito-infested forest.
Dude, it was so much fun. It was really exciting, and I just want to make sure anybody in the comments, if you have any questions for me and or Steve, please just feel free to put them in the comments there. And Steve and I both, we know each other pretty well now. I think we both agree. We'll answer absolutely anything. This is pretty much an ask us anything. So at least for me, there's nothing you can ask me that I won't answer. So I think that. Did you reach out to any media? Yeah, let's talk about the media end of it, Steve. So for me, I did a lot of media outreach, and we were talking a few minutes ago about how having a sponsor could have helped. I think also having like a secretary or an intern or somebody who's very media savvy, a college student or somebody, could have helped as well. Because a lot of the work that I was doing along the way, was it almost felt like busy work. Like I knew how important it was, and it was good that it came from me directly to say, hey, I'm in Toledo, Ohio. You should send this is the story. I'm in state number 34. Like, you should come send a reporter, and this is a great tale. And it would have been good, I think, to do some of that media outreach maybe a few days further out. You don't want to do it too far out because then they'll forget. But I think the sweet spot is about 3 or 4 days in advance. What do you think of that, Steve?
I agree 100%. And I did a little experiment when I was actually on the road. So there was a particular stop where there was a Tesla supercharger, and right next door was a news station. So as I'm charging my car, I literally walked over and walked inside the news station and told them my story real quick. And then literally in 5 minutes, they had a reporter come out, set up, the microphones, the video, blah, blah, blah. We did the whole interview, and it was, on TV, later that night. And I did that 4 days in a row in 4 different cities, in like Chattanooga and Nashville and Lexington. And it was amazing that literally all I had to do was walk into these places, and it was like an instant story, and they loved it. So it wasn't hard to get media at all. And that's only one way of doing it. I mean, I totally agree that I think you should have, reached out ahead of time to these people, a week in advance or 4 days in advance, rather than just walking in, which did work. But that just shows you that there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. And it is, I think both of us had really great stories that the media loved once they knew about it.
Yeah, I think that first of all, Steve's trip and my trip are a little different in that I was trying to get the media to come to the nonprofit organization that I was working with. So for me, it took a little more effort in advance to say, yeah, I'm going to be meeting with Read for Literacy and Jeanette Hrvatich, and we're going to be here at this hour and da-da-da. Whereas Steve's trip was more like, here I go, and he would walk in. And so for me, it was a little bit more complicated from a media perspective. It was also, you got to keep this in mind as well. And Steve and I met up about the halfway point of his trip. It was after the halfway point of my trip, I think, that once Steve and I talked a little bit about media, I think he got a little more assertive with it, which was good. But and I think that helped you get on TV a little bit more. But The one thing that I would recommend too, or the one thing you need to keep in mind, is that you're more likely to get media the further along you are in your trip. That's another thing to realize is, like, yeah, it was great. I definitely got media before I left because it was Greenville man going to embark on 50 state 100-day trip. It was cool. I was on all the different TV stations. But once you get into states like 2 and 3 and 4, and you pitch the story to the media, they're like, no. So I didn't get on TV until I think state number 6, even though some of the very best organizations that I worked with were right in the beginning in Montgomery and New Orleans. They didn't see it as newsworthy because it was the beginning of the trip. And also I was in New Orleans on Memorial Day weekend, so that was kind of tricky. But just remember that you got to keep pushing and you got to keep going. Because once I got to, somewhere around South Dakota, North Dakota, it was, yes, we'll be there. Yes, we'll be there. Yes, we'll be there. It's just city after city after city after city. Like television camera, like state 34, 35, 36, 37, like it picks up momentum. So you got to stick with it. You got to keep
Absolutely.
pushing. You can't say.
And I think part of that too. Oh, sorry. I think part of that too, aside from being, not at the beginning of the trip, but I think part of it is the fact that you're farther away from where you started from. Like, it's not really that big of a story that you're 100 miles away from your home, right? But when you're on the other side of the country and you tell them where you're from and how far you've already gone, then that's like, oh, wow, this guy's for real. I think that's part of it as well, just from as far as the distance of the trip too.
Yeah, and how about this? Here's a pro tip. I would recommend, if you're going to do a trip like this, I would do the Southeast last, because I think that you could get a whole lot of awesome media and everything there. If the Southeast was your last quadrant of the country. I know we're sort of drilling down even deeper now, but I did the Southeast first, and I love the Southeast. I want to live in the Southeast. I actually moved to South Carolina. I think the Southeast is going to be your best opportunity to get a message out there. The people are so kind and friendly in the Southeast. I just love it down there. I don't know if you agree with the regional idea there, but I think if I had done the Southeast as the last quadrant, states 40 through 50, they would have set up parades and stuff for me. I mean, it was a huge deal there. It was a big deal in the beginning, but the media didn't want to come out because that was the beginning of my trip. I think if I had turned it the other way and gone like, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, like if those were the last ones, I think it would have been bigger from a media perspective. I don't know what you think of that. And again, I started from South Carolina. You started from Phoenix, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're sort of tied to start from where you are.
I love the Southeast as well. I mean, and that's actually where I got some of the media coverage as well. So I agree that it's very media friendly. The people are great. I mean, I loved it. I mean, like Folly Beach, South Carolina was one of my favorite stops in the whole trip. Great little surf town, such a cool place. The people were unbelievable. So, I couldn't agree more.
Steve Sassman, why would a trip like what I did or what you did be an excellent opportunity for a sponsor?
Well, let me tell you. I mean, there are just so many stories, and it's a great way to attach a brand or a message to something that's changing every day. There's a new story, there's new interest, there's new people. There's just so many angles to it, and it's just not a regular commercial. It's something real, it's something live, and and there's something about a road trip too that I think so many people, especially in America, really get and understand. It's just kind of one of those things that people can latch onto and really understand. And even if they're not doing it, they wish they were doing it. So I think that's part of the value that I see in it. What about you?
I mean, I think the authenticity that I showed this summer is more valuable than any sort of commercial marketing that can be done. I think we're moving in a direction from a marketing perspective of humanizing a brand. And what could be more humanizing and simultaneously interesting than someone going out there and trying to pursue their dream and trying to not only pursue their dream, but do it in a way that positively affects the lives of thousands of others. I mean, I think what I did this summer made an enormous difference. The more I think about it, I mean, forget about the media perspective for a few minutes. I got to meet thousands of kids around the United States and offer and have one-on-one conversations and small group conversations and tell them to go out there and do what they want to do and live their dream and all of those cheesy phrases. But, it was freaking fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was awesome. And it's very difficult to grasp, when are brands going to come around on this sort of thing? I mean, I understand a brand needs its message to be totally polished and totally sort of under control. But I think part of what made at least my trip so exciting was that it was sort of intangible and it was sort of exciting and genuinely interesting, that you could watch and see. And I think if I had used a more popular live streaming app, if I had stuck with Periscope instead of Meerkat, maybe it would have picked up even more momentum. But I mean, you watched a lot of my trip on Meerkat, and I ended up watching quite a bit of yours. And it's gravitating. You want to see, first of all, is this person going to be okay? That you're out there by yourself.
Yeah.
But what happens next? You don't know. It's like you're writing a fairy tale as you go.
Well, it's a reality show, but it's not. It's a reality show with a purpose. You know what I mean? It's not just some dumb Kardashians thing. It's like, it's like people doing real and good and interesting things, which is so important. And I think, especially in today, I think brands need to realize, especially with social media, the polished commercial thing. I mean, that's so 1980s now, right? I mean, with social media, the customers have such, they're going to comment on, if someone puts out a video, they're going to comment and say, oh, that's so fake. That's not reality. So why not get behind the real life stuff, which is what you were doing, right? And show that and show real emotion and real things and real people and everything being real and legit. I mean, that is a much more realistic message that, consumers are going to buy into and gravitate towards. So to me, that's way better than a canned commercial.
Yeah. I mean, I think that from my trip specifically, I think that a lot of times, maybe from a mass marketing perspective, you want to create something that people can be a part of. So the more I think about it, it's like, did I need to create something, a way for people in Albuquerque to come out and actually volunteer with me? And that was something that I thought about a lot in the planning of the trip, was like, do I create a day, because I'm going to be there, I'm going to volunteer, right? I'm coming, all right, ring, 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 I'm coming to the Boys and Girls Club. I'm going to be there to help out, right? Think about how much more of an ask it is for me to say, I would like to plan a full day with you where I don't know how many people are going to show up. I don't know who those people are. So for me, it was a very difficult ask just to get in the door at these nonprofit organizations, for me to say, I would like to organize a group activity with people that I don't know. I mean, think of how much more colossal that is, and then you just get into the idea of, wanting your solitude, wanting to be able to live your life. Should we have put together events at night? Like, oh, come meet Steve Sassman at at Applebee's tonight in Fargo, or you know what I mean? Like that just gets so much more complicated. And I'm not saying it's not doable, but I'm saying it's not doable if you're by yourself.
No.
Because what both of us did was pretty magnificent in and of itself. To try and organize group activities in a limited amount of time. And I can't help but wonder if that was what maybe a hook that might have helped, but I think that's impossible.
No, I agree. And you know what? And that's the thing, though. That's the thing, like the help of having a brand that has a couple people that can assist you in the planning. They could organize the events, and then you just show up, right? And then you help lead the team of 50 people that helped show up for your event. And then it's a huge media thing. Then you've got a lot more interaction on Facebook and Twitter and everything else. And everyone's posting photos and selfies and blah, blah, blah. And then it just snowballs and snowballs as you go from city to city. I mean, that would be incredible. And that's why having an actual corporate sponsor would be, it would be huge. It would be huge for us as the ones running the whole thing, but it would be amazing for the impact that it would have. It would just be so much more, multiplied by that fact. Yeah.
I mean, let's put this in a practical lens. And I do want to talk about this before our time is up. I got another Blab to jump on at 2:00 with KP Kelly, which I'm excited for. But for example, when you and I met in Pittsburgh, I said, "Hey, Steve, want to come to Frick Park and come, remove some invasive bush honeysuckle," which I wrote about the other night, which was really exciting. But it was cool because we multiplied the effect that we had because I brought along Steve. So imagine you're a brand and you're sending Chris Strub around to all these different cities, and you say, "Come work with Chris Strub at Frick Park at 7 p.m. Tuesday." And now 100 people show up. That's like Steve just said. That's everything you want in this trip times at least 100, because they're going to amplify, take pictures, go live on Periscope, all these Snapchat, everything that you want. Now you've created 100 more brand advocates that are going to be there. And more importantly, from my perspective, we're bringing in an army of people to destroy this bush honeysuckle in the forest. Steve, think about that day in Frick Park. How much more work would we have done? How much more work could we have done if we had 100 people with us?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, what do we have, about 10 or 12?
Yeah, we're about 12. We're about 12 people.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, we would have just... we would have killed it.
It was so funny. If you haven't seen the video, there's some Snapchat video, and there's some Meerkat recap video of me and Steve, and I almost threw my back out. And I was a 29-year-old man. Steve remembers me yanking on that jack or whatever it was, just as hard as I possibly could. It was so much fun in Pittsburgh. So huge shout out to at Pittsburgh Parks. So let's answer Greg's question. Do you think my 50 state speaking is a good idea? I have a book coming also. What do you think, Steve?
Absolutely. Well, what are you going to speak about? Give us a little more detail. But I'd love to hear more.
Greg, if you want to jump in the seat with me and Steve, we've got a few more minutes here. Anybody else in the chat, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'd love for Greg to jump in the third seat here so he can chat with us. And Subir is going to jump in. Hey, what's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hey,
how are you? Good.
We all have yellow tops on. That's really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just stumbled into this, but I have this vision. I'm a yogi, and in the kind of at the tail end now of breast cancer treatment, and I started kind of journaling my process on Facebook. And I got all these people supporting me from all over the world, people I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. And I got this idea, like, I want to say thank you, because many of them sent me money and all kind of, and just, it was incredible. And so I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to actually go and say thank you live to these people? Like, and I did it with one person. We actually ran the Susan B. Komen race in Virginia. And she ran like a week before I had my double mastectomy, and she got a shirt for me and ran with my NANK team, Sabira, and all this stuff. This woman never met me except on Facebook. And I told her the next year when the race was going to go again, I will still be alive and I will go to Virginia and I will run it with you, which I did. It was incredible. And so I thought it would be an awesome opportunity for me to travel, because that's one thing I want to do now that I'm alive still. And I want to say thank you to people. And yoga is something that helped me. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to do like a yoga day where I'm actually leading a yoga class with people all over the world, and I just kind of jump in and maybe we do a conversation. I don't know. But hearing what you guys are doing just kind of got me thinking, wow, I could really do this. And I'm working on a book as well. Who knows when that'll come out, but I'm writing constantly. So thank you for letting me jump in.
Yeah,
great idea.
You got it.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. Your story sounds super inspiring. And the one thing that I think Steve and I would agree with, and you could probably back us up on this as well, is that it's really wonderful to meet people through social media, and really wonderful to, get comments and likes and stars and, private messages, whatever it is. But nothing in the world compares to the feeling of meeting people and supporting them in real life.
Yep.
And getting out there and doing it. And we always try and remember, or at least I do, why we do what we do on social media. And it is to connect with others in ways that are going to be meaningful in the long term. And so it's wonderful to hear that you did that. And if there's any way that either Steve or I can continue to support you and offer more advice or direction in helping you get out there and do that more, we'd both be happy to. If there's anything that I can do to help you get out there, my goal at least was to hopefully inspire people to take my idea and run with it and do more. And if there's any way that I can help you do that, please don't hesitate at all to keep in touch. All right.
I will do that. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
You guys too. Thanks.
What's going on, Greg?
Hey, Chris, what's happening, man? I love your
Hey, man, good to see you. Thanks for jumping in the seat. Appreciate it.
No, thank you very much, man. I want to talk to you because I'm known as the Big Dreamer on Periscope. I don't know social media. That's why I messed up. I'm Greg Inspires on Twitter. I didn't know you were supposed to keep everything the same. So I'm new. So I'm at the Big Dreamer on Periscope, but Greg Inspires on Twitter. But, I have my book coming out about my life. I'm one of 15 children with parents who are addicts. Second oldest brother's longest death row inmate in America, brothers who died of drug overdose, sisters who are prostitutes. I became the first person in my family history out of 15 kids. My dad had 19, my mom had 16. I have 14 brothers and sisters. I became the first person to make it past the 9th grade. I became a millionaire at 25 in the fast food franchising, retired 10 years ago at 39. So now I have a book being written about my life by a ghostwriter in California. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, but when I heard you guys traveled like that, that's why I asked you guys. I just thought, what if I do a 50-state speaking with 50 schools to inspire them, to teach them that if I can do it, a guy called the Big Dreamer, and they used to call me that, not in a good way. Not in a good way. People used to laugh at me 40 years ago. My wife and I have been married 28 years, but we went to high school, grew up together. Those same people that used to laugh at us now want to come look at our Ferrari. They want advice. So that's why I'm going to tell and teach the young kids when I speak to school. I spoke to 10 schools last week. I'm speaking at the Periscope Summit. I'm speaking in Jamaica and Tampa, Florida soon. So that's my life. I used to think my life was about making money and being the first to make it out of my family. But now I understand that I have this gift. And I didn't speak till I was 10 years old because of violence. My wife is just upstairs. I was practicing a speech, and she cries because she knows how hard it was for me to speak. I have 350 employees. I never used to speak to them. I would delegate to them. I'm the great delegator. So I joined this thing called Toastmasters, and they taught me how to speak. And within 7 months, I was at Caesar's Palace. I was competing for the World Championship of Public Speaking after only being in it 5 months. They told me that's pretty good. to reach that point in only 5 months. That's what we do now. I didn't realize, when I didn't make it to the finals, I thought I was a failure. Until the guy who beat me came up and says, "Wow, Greg, you've only been in this less than 6 months." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've been trying since 1997. So
wow.
what that did was showed me that I can speak, that I do have something to say. So my wife has still never heard me speak. And I've spoken over 1,000 times, but this is what I think I want to do. When my book comes out, it's called The Big Dreamer: From Extreme Poverty to Extreme Success. One of my mentors growing up in the inner city of Columbus, Ohio, was this nerdy guy who dropped out of 8th grade. He was orphaned and started a hamburger chain called Wendy's, Dave Thomas. So that's what I want to do, is give back. And man, I heard your story, Chris. I want to go 50 states and speak to 50 schools. I have the time. I don't have to get up and work anymore. Like I said, we retired 10 years ago at 39 and 35. I just need to learn how to pull this off logistically wise and contact the schools. I just told my wife, I said, maybe we don't really contact the schools or contact the superintendent and say, "Look, I can't pinpoint it, but can I just drop in on this day and speak to the school?" And I have a lot of friends in the media throughout the country. So I have connections there, but I just don't know how to go about it. It's not like anything. We all didn't know something at one time. We learned, but I would love to hear from your guys' perspective. What do you think about that?
Go
ahead, Steve.
Chris, I think you'll agree, but I think in this case, I think you'd want to do it the way Chris did it, and that's to schedule it and, be in a specific city at a specific time. And then within that time that you're in that city, you've got some leeway as to when you can meet up with a specific school, and you can maybe approach 5 different schools, and, whichever one has the time when you can fit it in, go with it, But, I would do it that way personally.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tricky. I haven't done speaking engagements yet. That's something obviously that I think I'm thinking a lot about, and you could probably offer me advice on how to go about doing more stuff like that. But in terms of planning an actual sort of big long trip like this, I think that's part of the hook to it. Obviously, you have your amazing backstory, which thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm very excited to meet you in San Francisco. But
well.
part of the hook of why 50 States 100 Days worked for me was that everyone knew exactly what I was doing. So if you have that hook to the trip itself, and you say, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to be in Arkansas as part of this 50 state trek on this day, I think they're going to be more likely to allow you that opportunity in that stage to speak, because they know that that's a limited opportunity for them. You say you dictate it, and you say, "I'm going to be here on X, and I'm going to speak to a school, and I hope it's your school. I'll speak to the first one that gets back to me." I did that a few times with the nonprofits that I visited. Was like, okay, I still have an opening on August 8th in Hartford, and the first organization that gets back to me is going to be the one that gets it. I think you even have a little more oomph to your story, that you can say, "I'm going to speak at the first school that gets back to me." I think it's going to complicate it a little bit if it becomes a paid thing. If you're just going to speak just for the sake of speaking, I think there's an enormous amount of value to that. If you're going to sell a book or do a media tour or whatever it is, you got to think of the logistics of it, and money always complicates things. But I think saying, "I'm going to be here, here's your opportunity to hear my story," I think that will help you get in the door easier than if you just sort of say, "Well, I hope to do this. Can you help me?" You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You said
I don't have a problem. I got connections with the Marriott, with Hilton, so I can get my lodging. I have the time. I have the funds. It's going to be a free thing. Like I spoke to 1,000 kids last week for free. I spoke at Ashland University for Urban Meyer. He has a thing called Team Focus. He's the coach here at Ohio State. So I spoke to 1,000 kids there. I just want to make sure that there's never a kid like me, one of 15, to ever make it out. It should be 15 of 15 that makes it out. I just dropped my 15-year-old niece, who I've raised since she was born, her and her sister, 15 and 10. My baby sister, number 15, gave birth at 11 years old. At 11 and 14.
Wow.
and I'm the first to ever make it out past the 9th grade. Are you kidding me? That should never happen. So that's what I want to do. Is I want to inspire people. That's what I do here on Periscope. I inspire people. And I tell people I don't have anything to sell, because everyone always says, hey, big dreamer, what do you sell? I say, I have nothing. The only thing I'm trying to sell people is the belief that if Dave Thomas can do it, an 8th grade dropout, an orphan, if I can do it, one of 15 kids, then why can't you do it? So that's what I do. I want to inspire every kid that I possibly see, whether they are a cart boy or girl at a grocery store or a 66-year-old guy who I know to graduate from Harvard and Georgetown, but he's afraid to start a business. I want to inspire everyone, because I don't know when my last day is going to be here. I'm a lifelong diabetic. Almost lost my life and my leg 2 years ago. I lost part of my right foot. So I don't know when my last day is. And it's not about the money for me. It's not. Because I love it when my former employees who I haven't seen in 20 years, one who is a professor at OSU, another one is a pediatrician in Calcutta, India. When I love it when they come to me and say, hey, Greg, thank you very much for pushing me when I thought I needed to drop out of Ohio State because I wasn't accepted in the medical program. That's what I love. You know, that replaces any exotic car I had, the big house I stand in now, telling people come to me and saying, thank you. Because of you, Greg, I didn't give up. Because of you, big dreamer, you pushed me when I didn't believe in myself. So that's what I'm doing. I just want to go to 50 states, 50 schools, inspire people, get my book out there. And the cost is all on me. I just want people to listen.
Well, Greg, it's great to hear from you. I got to run. Steve, if you want to stick around, you feel free to, there's some people in the room if you want to keep chatting about your trip. I got to jump in with KP Kelly. I'm jumping to another Blab at 2 p.m. Greg, we should continue the conversation. If you want to DM me, maybe we can have an offline conversation as well, because I have a few ideas for ways that you can get the word out about your trip and continue to get that message out to as many people as possible. But it was great to see you guys.
DM you
Greg,
on
was great.
Twitter?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Remember,
and like I said, I'm jumping in another Blab now. So Steve, if you want to stick around, but I got to run. So this was awesome.
I got to bail too.
Okay.
But, thanks so much, you guys.
Great to see you guys.
Thank you guys very much.
All right.
Greg, I'll be in touch, man.
Sure. Have a great day.
All right, Steve. I'll see you soon. Okay.
All right. Later, buddy.
Yep. Thank you so much for tuning in. Check out teamstrub.com, facebook.com/teamstrub. Add me on Snapchat, @Strub. I'm late to jump in with KP Kelly. I'll see you there.